Welcome back. It is always a good day when I wake up and I give thanks, and I know that today is a day that it is my privilege to introduce you to remarkable human beings. We are on this journey together, and I'm so grateful. My goodness, the show is growing each week. My top countries right now, I'll just go in the order. I just went on the back end a few minutes ago. Of course, the United States, because that's where I'm based. Right behind it, Australia. I love you guys down under. Thank you. Canada coming in at number 3, the UK, Ireland, India, brand new. We also have Spain, Norway, Belgium, Ecuador, New Zealand. Of course, you've been with me for a few weeks now. The Philippines, Sweden, and brand new this week is Slovenia. So I cannot tell you how meaningful it is that you're tuning in to a conversation about death. For me, death is dinner conversation. Why death? Well, to get through life, we all have to get to that very important part of it, which is whatever comes next, our journey. So I like to speak to experts about death, dying, grief, hospice, wills and trusts. And of course, you all know my personal favorite, the afterlife, which I like to call the next room. So you are in for the greatest treat tonight. This is going to be an incredible show. My mediumship. I was introduced to the two guests that I'm having on the show today through Robert Lyons, and also, you know her, you love her, Sandra Champlain. So both of them said, "Hey, would you like to have, Philip Dykes and Kerry McLeod on the show?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I'd be so honored." These two are leading the charge in evidence-based mediumship. And if you're like, huh, what does that mean? Because I get so many requests like, how do I find a reputable medium? These two are going to break it down for you. So hang on, buckle up, and welcome to the next room. This is Phillip Dykes and Kerry McLeod, which, by the way, they are husband and wife, just in case you were wondering. Welcome.
Thank you very much for that phenomenal
I'm
welcome.
just wondering who you're talking about, Jane. No, it's absolutely wonderful to be here. As you can see, we've got senses of humor as well, but we're just as passionate about, yeah, exactly. We are both very, very, very passionate about the afterlife and evidential mediumship. It's something that is very, very close to our hearts.
We actually believe that when we talk about evidential mediumship, that it should be as freely talked about as we had that discussion, as you've outlined, around the table about death. It really is something that, wouldn't it be lovely if everybody in the world could believe that when we take our last physical breath, there's a place we go, there's people we can reach out to, and that there's support that we can get. So it'd be lovely if we could have a small part in reassuring everybody in the countries that are listening to you that there is something after physical death.
Absolutely. And to talk about it round a dinner table is absolutely fantastic. The majority of people these days only think about death when it is getting close to that point and they start to question. And it's usually from a fear base that they talk about it from. So if we can educate people, if we can help people see what it's really about, and we can still communicate afterwards, and we can still reach out and comfort people through factual evidence and very poignant things they used to say, it is incredibly inspiring. Most people think that evidence is about proving we live after death, but actually it is for the loved one to reach out and inspire their loved one still living to live their greatest and truest life.
When we talk about mediumship, we talk about planting the seed for spiritual development. Yes, we have many of your listeners that are grieving at this time, and they will have their own need for mediumship. We also have those that are curious about the afterlife and the spirit world, and mediumship will help them have their own experience. But there's many people walking this planet that have no awareness as yet and no experience. So to have an evidential mediumship reading, one that's delivered correctly, plants the seed that starts their own spiritual journey. And a spiritual journey asks the questions like, what happens when we die? Where do we go? Where did we come from? Why am I here? Was it preordained? Is there life after death? And suddenly we end up with more questions than we did in the first place.
Boy, I love what you just said, Kerry. Planting the seeds for spiritual development. Boy, that's beautiful. I wrote that down. That is quotable. Um, Either one of you can take this because you got such a good groove. I'm sure that you volley back and forth with things like this all the time. What exactly is evidential mediumship? Like how do you prove? Because so many people don't buy into it. They think it's a bunch of hooey because it's like, oh, how can someone really have evidence that there is this connection with our loved ones once they drop the meat suit and transfer on to the next room?
Mhm. It's a really good question, and this is the difference with evidence-based mediumship. It's all about giving evidence of that loved one. It's not evidence about you and your life. It's evidence about them and their life, such as full names, addresses, hobbies, locations, activities that they used to do, hobbies they used to do. But the difference is with evidential mediumship is we make statements such as, I have your mum, her name is Margaret, for example, or I have your dad, his name is John, and this is where he lived, this is his memories. We make statements, we don't ask the questions. And everything, and the way that we understand evidence-based mediumship is the evidence is the message. So if dad came through talking about his job, then there's a message on the end of that that will be, there's a relevancy of why dad gave evidence about his job is because the recipient, the person we're talking to, has got issues with their job. So it's all evidence-based. It's none of this stuff where we say just at the moment you've got this going on and you're at the crossroads, because who isn't at a crossroads? But it's about mum, dad, brother, sister, son, daughter, cousin, auntie, nephew, whoever, friends, whoever's in the spirit world, what they're bringing forward.
When we talk about evidential mediumship, the evidence that we like to give correctly, as Phil has said, is in statements. But the reason we become so passionate about spreading the word of the spirit world and evidential mediumship is because we saw so much of what we didn't like. Not to say that it doesn't have a place, but for us it didn't fit. When mediums ask questions and allow their sitters to fill in the gaps. So I see a bike that would mean something to you, or I hear the J name and that there's a connection to a European country that would mean something to you. We got an understanding from watching mediums work, and we have worked individually for 25 years. We only met the tail end of the teens after, well, working together. So it was around about 2017 we got together, but we've been working as mediums for over 25 years separately. And when we got together and we were working, we'd have conversations about, isn't it frustrating when there's so much more lies beneath what people are doing? How can we maybe change people's minds and increase the standards of what people should expect?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we began to look at what standards should be and start, well, initially we banned the words for our students of there's a connection to and something about. For us to take those words out of a statement, it means the medium has to understand what they've got. And for that to happen, they need to actually see the individual in spirit as a person, not as a tick list of information, which is another thing we get a little bit upset about. Mediums saying that they got 42 pieces of information correct without the opportunity for the sitter to say yes or no. How can the medium know that they have the loved one there if they're not saying yes or no, or confirming.
We need that validation, but also we are slightly different because we look at it with a logical and rational mindset. We're like everybody else. We look at mediumship and say, okay, how does this prove to be true? How can we come across in a plausible way that people can accept? You don't have to be the most intelligent button in the world to understand that. But when we see mediums, some mediums working, as Kerry said, and we'll be polite, we don't like it because it's more questions than anything else. So when we look at evidence, or when we receive that evidence, we look at it. What is it trying to tell us? What is it trying to make? And that's where we can make the statements, the factual statements that are undeniable to your loved ones, because we're telling their story of life in the way that they want it to be told, with the evidence they're providing. So we don't interfere with it, whether it's a son or a daughter, whether it's a mother or a father. How they choose to bring their evidence and what they talk about is individual to them. And I guarantee this, and I made this statement in New Zealand and Australia recently, and they really saw the evidence at hand, is we will give you information that is not researched, that is not from a social media platform, that is not documented. It is personal, factual details that only you, the loved one, should know. That's what evidential mediumship is all about.
I love that. Wow. Oh man, so many questions swirling. This is so wonderful that you're coming on to break it down, because so many of my listeners are, grief is a big thing. We lose our loved ones. Do we really lose them? I don't believe we do. I think they just step over into the next realm. But it's still very hard for a lot of people, and grief can wrap them in just a horrible cocoon and spiral out of control. And they want to know that their loved one is just in the next room. Um, what you just said about it's not researched, it's not through social media, it's very personal. How do you, and you both can answer this, Kerry and Phil, how do you personally receive the download? How is it coming in for each of you?
We work very similarly in the fact that most mediums will receive their evidence in a number of different ways. They'll perceive some pictures, they'll perceive some sounds or words, they'll perceive feelings, they might even perceive taste and smell. When those all come together in a way for myself, it's a sense of knowing, which is why I can start a statement saying, I know your sister was, or I know your father was. When it comes together in that way, it happens internally. For me, I believe that the soul is the medium. This is just what it happens to be in. So if we think about, if I were to take my last breath now, I'll not do it publicly, but if I were, then I become the spirit world. I still have a soul, I just don't have a body. That soul still has what we would call an emanation, or a content. It still has what is there within me and my personality. So when we're working with the soul, my soul connects with the soul of another person. And this is where some people get confused, because if I start speaking, I've come back from the dead now, I'm back as a medium. If I start speaking about you, Jane, and about your life, I'm working psychically. It's as simple as that. If I say I have your mum here, and I know she's this and this and this, and what she wants to say is just at the moment, you're doing this in your car, in your house. The first part is mediumship, the latter part is psychic.
Mm-mm.
So for me as as an evidential medium, I like to stay, or if somebody wants an evidential medium reading, I like to stay with the communicator, which means every fact, detail, memory will be about my person in the spirit world. Because the purpose of an evidential medium reading is to prove that they're there. The purpose of a psychic reading is about the person here their life.
Oh,
We
oh,
need to
say that
remember,
again. Say that again. That is really great. I love the way that you just separated psychic and medium.
it's something that Phil and I teach from the very early stages, whether it be online or face to face. Phil and I are very clear that if a medium is talking about the person in front of them's life, then they are working psychically. If they are talking about their fencing, their decorating their car, their holiday, their health, anything to do with their relationships, they are working psychically. So the reason we got so passionate, and Phil can maybe add on once he's done about working with Robert, is because we see it so often being blended. Evidential mediumship for me comes in all of these ways until I sense, I see, I hear, I feel all together to the point where I know. But if I'm working mediumistically, everything will be about the person in the spirit world. So if somebody says, I really like a reading, I'd like to hear from my dad and I want to hear all about my relationship. Firstly, who says dad's the person that can help the individual in the relationship? Might be mum. And secondly, would mum and dad give it relationship advice anyway? So we need to say to them, well, that's okay. Your parents might be here, but would it be okay if I worked psychically? Because that's the best way I'm going to get an understanding of you and your life.
Mhm. And again, I don't work to, I'm very similar to Kerry. What we do as a medium when we're working is we receive that emanation, we receive that impression from the communicator. And as soon as we receive it, we actively engage with it. And it's a journey within. It moves us mentally, emotionally, and physically. And even though we're living in this time and this place right here and now, it becomes real. And the mind of the medium moves from the place where I'm talking to you from right now and normal reality. We move into what we call a impressed reality, a spiritual reality, where we see, we hear, and we sense. Now, depending on the strength of the communicator, the loved one, it can be at variant degrees. Depending on the personality of that loved one, it will happen at variant degrees. But we will emotionally sense, will be impressed and steered and moved through the emotional senses and awareness we have, but also where they can imprint pictures upon the mind. And then we enter into a deeper sense where we live that picture, we understand that picture. And clairvoyance is what we call it, that is highly evidential. It can give you everything from names to locations to jobs to specific memories. And as we move into that realm and deeper into the essence of the person that's coming, and it's really important for the medium to get into that essence, because it doesn't just tell us what the evidence is about, it steers into the right way of presenting it and understanding that evidence. But again, we have another faculty. There's three main ones. There's many, many, many different faculties, but the three main ones are the seeing, the sensing, and the feeling. Sorry, seeing, sensing, and hearing. The hearing is what we call clairaudience. Now, this is factual information. This is factual evidence. So if we hear the name, say, John Paul, then we can't change it to a John and a Paul. It's got to be John Paul. And if we hear it with an accent, then we can get the nationality of that person. And if we, and also with hearing, we get sensing. So even though it's a subjective world, a world we live with inside, and it's all the information is being steered from inside ourselves, it sends us in the right way to use it. So all these faculties come into play at different times, at different variant degrees, and that's how we can be evidential, accurate, and where we make statements from that understanding of that emanation that we're living. And this is one of the big reasons, and this is how we got in touch with Robert Lyons. We've known Robert for some time, and he said he wanted to make a film. And we thought, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, because we've worked on other TV networks and things, and it's not always worked in our favor with editing things and all the rest of it. But he said, I want to make a film that speaks the truth. So we said, we're on board. We want to show people. So Robert has filmed us in many locations around the world, demonstrating private readings. He's interviewed us, he's followed us. And the really interesting backstory to this as well, as much as we want to get the word of the spirit world out there and show people the standards and what we should receive, Robert's had an interest in the mediumship development, and all of a sudden, because he's been with us for so long and he's received a lot of the teaching as he's filmed it, he started to pick things up and he's made statements. And that little person that he is, I nearly gave him his nickname then, that person that he is has started to develop his mediumship. He started to pick things up, even where we're on locations together, and he's smiling and he's aware of what we're becoming aware of, the impressions. So it's a marvelous experience to have, but it should be done with ethics and morals, and there should be a logical intelligence behind it, within it, to make sense to people with the statements that we make to prove that we live beyond the physical death, and we give it a valid point. Now, I know before, Jane, you mentioned people think it's a little bit woo-woo and everything else. I come from a civil engineering background. My family, teachers and engineers. So my mindset's exactly the same as theirs. So I look at it that way. If I'm being impressed a certain way, it's got to make sense to me. This is my logic. If it doesn't make sense to me, it won't make sense to the person in front of me. So everything that we are impressed with, we challenge. What is this telling us? Where is it taking us? What is the bigger picture here? And it's having that duality of a mindset within this ability that makes it evidential.
I think it's interesting that Robert has been around the globe with us. We're actually just back from Australia and New Zealand, and Robert joined us there. He has been with us to Canada. He's been with us to the States. Well, he's from the States, so he went to Santa Fe, New Mexico with us. He's been in Florida with us. He's got footage from New Jersey when we were there, in New York.
Ohio.
And Ohio, yes. So there's lots of footage that he's managed to get. There's also lots of
Students.
I was about to say is it bloopers?
Bloopers as well, yes.
Because he doesn't stop rolling. So it's
Good.
going to be very, very interesting to get behind the scenes. He's actually been to Scotland, which is where I come from, and been to Phil's hometown as well, just to get a backdrop to it. So it's been really, really interesting. And it goes to show that the best proof of there being life after death is to have your own experience. And that's what Robert's had.
Oh, I love that. I love what you said, Phil, about ethics, morals, integrity. So very important in every facet of life, and especially with something like this. Let's talk about the teaching aspect of it, because my mediumship is where you can find both Phil and Kerry, read about their whole story. You two actually really enjoy helping others to develop their mediumship, correct?
Absolutely. We thrive on that. To see somebody that is interested, who has that natural ability within them, we love nothing more than to help them take them steps to unfold and develop that ability so they're able to share that as a gift with humanity. But to take them through the steps, to educate them to the processes, the mechanics, and the sheer, and I'm going to repeat something you just said there, Jane, the ethics and morals within mediumship, because we believe there should be an honesty there. And we have a golden rule. If the reading doesn't work within a few minutes, it's a full refund, we stop, okay? Like I said before, it's got to make sense to us before it makes sense to the recipient. So we have that ethics and morals and those guidelines in there. But it's all not just about mediumship development, it's about the spiritualization of the person as well. We want to come at it so they can understand empathy. They can understand how things feel for people. You mentioned before, we all suffer from that one thing we don't want to suffer from, and that's grief of the loss of a loved one. To have compassion, to have empathy for the journey that somebody's going through is very, very important. I've witnessed readings that I've had myself that I've been quite distraught from afterwards, where I've been told absolute nonsense and told and predicted bad things. I don't believe the spirit world ever do that. I've never experienced it through myself. These morals and guidelines are really important, but we teach what we call the purest form of mediumship, which is about evidence, emotional and practical, objective evidence that is understood, that is palatable, and can be profound, can be life-changing, and can be uplifting. And we must remember what mediumship's about, which is inspiring the living to live their best life.
When we talk
Mm.
about ethics and values and the morals, both Phil and I come from a corporate background. So we've worked within policies and procedures, governance and accountability. We're both transformational coaches, so we know about the contracting stage and about the code of ethics. I've studied counselling and psychotherapy. So we both have come from a background where ethics and morals and values are paramount. So when we see mediums and psychics, you'll never hear us call ourselves psychic mediums. We are mediums because every medium is psychic.
Mm.
So what we need to look at is there should never be any prescribing, never anything about a person's health, unless you are a medical practitioner, in which case you're probably working in a GP's office, as GP surgery or doctor's surgery or hospital. We shouldn't be predicting. We should not be telling somebody, I have difficulty making my own decisions. I certainly don't want responsibility for somebody else's decisions. We're also about empowering people. We can't empower people if we keep having them come back for readings for every decision they make.
Wow.
We need
No
to make it
kidding.
very clear that if they have a reading, as Phil has said, if it doesn't work in the first few minutes and we contract in with a person, then we will reschedule or we will refund completely. We also need to be aware that when we're working with somebody, to outline the difference between psychic and mediumship, because we take every opportunity to educate people about what the difference is. So when we see mediums predicting or predicting illness or death, it's not, if it cannot be changed, why give it? If we cannot change the outcome, or the person we're speaking to can do nothing to avert the outcome, why give it? We're giving a life sentence to somebody who's waiting on the day that a certain something happens. We also need to look at cost. Our cost for a reading for half an hour remains unchanged for the last 7 years.
Several years, yeah.
But people have this understanding that the more they pay, the better the reading. So we hear
Oh.
people paying $200-300 for a half-hour reading.
Some quite a considerable bit more.
More than that is even nuttier. I don't understand it. There are very, very good mediums going about their business doing beautiful readings that don't necessarily have a name, but people talk about them and pass their name to their neighbour or their family member. And those are the types of mediums that are not seen and not valued, perhaps.
We also teach, one of the things that we're very passionate about is being diligent about people's state of being, mindset, grief. We know that grief cannot be cured by a reading. I know there's mediums out there that state they cure grief. They do not. They plant a seed that helps them on that journey of healing and finding a peace, and that is it. It gives them that seed to think on that they're around, but grief is a personal journey. It's a loss. So we educate our students to that fact, and we help them through that place that certain words, certain sayings don't help somebody when they're in that place of grief. We also teach them that a reading at the wrong time can make that grief 100 times worse. It can be, and unfortunately, I've got to hold my hand up. Many, many years ago, we're talking 20 years ago, I remember doing a reading for somebody, and I remember I was happy, I was over the moon. The evidence was phenomenal. And right at the end of the reading, the person that works me, I heard a voice say, "Now you're going to get it." And I did. For about 20 minutes, I was torn strips off. I completely shattered the lady's religion, understanding, belief of where the loved one had gone to. Everything I did was plausibly right. Full name, addresses, the plot where she was buried, a mother, or everything. But I didn't realize that a reading at the wrong time could do so much harm to somebody. And since that person I've read, we've talked many, many times, and we've discussed it, and we're the best of friends. But it learnt me a serious lesson about empathy and understanding of somebody's grief. So we're very adamant that we have to, as a medium, sometimes have a pastoral service where we just talk to people. We
Do it
listen to
often.
I mean, through the pandemic, we did it so much just to help people get through those stages or find that little bit of solace as they lost their loved ones.
During 2020, we probably did as much paid work as we did pastoral work, which we didn't charge for, because so many people were losing loved ones in extreme circumstances. So the pastoral part of it is vitally important. But what we've got to have a look at is when we're working with people who are grieving, sometimes the worst thing to do is to do a reading again and again, because it can halt the grieving process. If I've lost a child and I go to a medium and feel that connection, it can feel like the last hope, the last shred of light for me to be able to communicate with my child. It's not always healthy though, because I keep going back to that medium and the hope of having that thread of something instead of accepting that physically they're not here. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, absolutely, they're still here. But nothing can take away the fact that physically I can't hug, I can't speak to, I can't walk with, I can't talk to.
Wow. You two are just, integrity just keeps popping into my head. How refreshing and how wonderful just to hear that you're doing the work and that you were doing the work during the pandemic. And it wasn't about making that dollar. It was about helping those that are in the throes of grief, and to find that little glimmer of solace, like you said, Phil. Wow. I guess all that's left for me to do is to please, I would like to open the door and have you join me anytime you want, because I feel like we barely got there. No wonder why Robert's following you all over the planet and videotaping everything. Um, because in just this short conversation, I can see um, why you're here, your purpose. You are here to help elevate all of us on our journey, and you're doing it selflessly, and you're doing it with evidence, which is really quite beautiful. So grateful. Um, what's next? What's next? What's going on next for you kids? I know I actually purchased the movie. It was great. The Evidence of Afterlife was the first one, right? So Robert must be working on another one. Is that what's going on?
I feel the Evidence of the Afterlife is the one he's working on just now.
Yes.
And
Okay.
the trailer is out there, so you might well
Ah,
have seen the trailer for that.
okay.
And he's hoping to have that out by the end of this year, beginning of next. There is so much education needed, so much that people deserve to hear and understand. This isn't a gift that Phil and I have. It's an ability that we have developed. The gift is being able to share it with other people. Anybody has the ability to be psychic. Everybody has the ability to feel and sense their own loved ones. Not everybody is going to be a medium that works with the spirit world full time. We know that. In fact, Phil and I said to each other, we're never going to work for the
We
spirit
did say
world
that
full
actually.
time.
Like, the thing to actually, I always said that I'd never be the demonstrating medium, but the spirit world have progressed it that way. As you've said, Jane, we're doing the film at the moment, Evidence of the Afterlife, and Robert's in that process of editing it and putting it all together. And even we don't get to see it. He just keeps on teasing us about it. But our job is to educate people. That's why we do a lot of teaching. And with Robert's help as well, we've created many online courses, such as Udemy, and even on the website, there's pre-recorded courses and things like that. But our main focus is to demonstrate what we teach, is to be out there showing people about evidential mediumship, but bringing it to the masses. If I go back to 2020, the spirit world whispered within my consciousness that they want to reach as many people as they can, and not always through religion. And what we found as we looked at this and questioned this, that there's many people that want to know about mediumship, but don't want to go into a religious place like a church. So with the help of Sandra Champlain, and what we all got together on was to build the Sunday gathering that a lot of people come to, because it's not religious based. It has an ethics, it has morals, it has an understanding of spirituality.
And it's 7 p.m. UK, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Yes. So we're trying to, on a Sunday, and we're trying to spread the word as much as possible and reach as many people so they can find these sources of education, that they can witness something about life after death. And also, like your opening statement was, we should be talking about it over the dinner table. We should have a mindset that's open. And over the many years, I've met skeptical people, cynical people, and I don't mind, because they all have questions that they want to know. But it's bringing that proof. My mindset says we need to talk to people, not just to educate, but to learn ourselves. So I think the next thing for us kids, as Jane said, is to carry on what we're doing. And
absolutely.
Just
we've actually got a whole lot of free resources on our website.
And
so
good.
If people go to mymediumship.com, they'll find a whole lot of free resources there. If they have iOS phone, tablet, Mac, they can go and download our app. So all they need to do is type in My Mediumship and they'll get the app. There's tons of free stuff on there. We're also...
the video diaries.
Yeah, the video diaries. Every day since we went away to Australia and New Zealand, and people said, we want to keep in contact with you. So we did a video diary. You can find them on YouTube, you can find them on the website and on the app and on Facebook, social media platforms. And we're still doing them, but they're becoming more educational. They're becoming more insightful, because that's where people have asked us to talk about. So today was about today's video diary, which isn't up yet, but
it's about spiritual coaching.
Is about spiritual coaching. So if people want to follow that, we will continue to do them for as long as we have 3 minutes in the day.
And as long as you can see that Kerry loves making them.
I love it. Well, what I'll do too, just so you know, I mean, I will post all the links on the podcast page and on my social media and on my new YouTube channel. I'll do the Sunday gathering that you're doing. I'll post a link for Evidence of the Afterlife for the movie that's forthcoming. I think the movie I saw was We Don't Die. I think that's the one that Robert did. Well, he's done so much.
Sonia Rinaldi one that he did.
Right. Yes. That's the one that sorry, I didn't mean to get that confused, but this is also super exciting. And I'll put a link to everything, mymediumship.com. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing the passionate clarity and the work that you are doing. I don't get that it's work for either one of you, though. It's just your call. You know, you are here and you got that tap, right? You got that tap from beyond that said, get out there and help other people to understand that there is nothing to fear, that literally life just goes on and on and on. It's just in a different realm, a different shape, a different feel, but we never die. We literally do not die. There is no possible way for us to die. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Any final thoughts before I let you go? Because just so that the audience knows, they're in the UK, so it is like after midnight for them, and they've been so gracious to stay up after a very long day of work to have a chat with me on the next room. Final thoughts are yours.
All I'll say to everybody is keep an open mind, have an intelligent mindset, and have that logic and rationality there to question everything that you come across and look for your own truths, but never stop believing and never stop asking your loved ones in the spirit world to give you signs, because they are more than happy to do that. Those moments that we find that our loved ones are reaching out can be quite profound and can be quite life-changing.
When we hear from people in the spirit world, they describe hearing their name and being thought of as being brought back into life. Isn't it lovely to think about our loved ones thinking about us? Those in the spirit world, if words and thoughts are energy and that energy goes to the spirit world, if we all thought about our loved ones 100 times a day, our loved ones in the spirit world get 100 messages a day of how we miss them, how we love them, how we hope they're doing well, the memories of what we've got. We can have our own connection to the spirit world. Our hope is that one day everybody has at least one personal experience, undeniable, that their loved ones are there.
Wow. Please come back on the show.
We'd love
I'm
to.
just gonna leave it right there. You need to come back on the show again and again. Anytime you want to just have a chat, shoot me an email and say, "Hey, are you up?" And of course, I'll be up. It's only 4 o'clock in California by the time it's midnight and you're done working for the day. Um, thank you so much. I was starting to well up because the reason why I started this podcast was really to figure things out. It was all about my grief journey and the loss of people. I keep looking up because I have them all here in my little studio and behind me on the wall. But it was really for me to try to peel back all the layers and go, okay, I know you didn't go anywhere. And when you start receiving signs, it is remarkably beautiful. It is so great. And I love what you just said, Phil. Keep asking, keep asking. And I love what you just said, Kerry, about if we're thinking about them 100 times a day, it's almost like we're giving them this big, beautiful virtual hug all the time and keeping them very much part of our day-to-day life, even though physically we cannot touch them, hold their hand, hug them, talk on the phone, cook them a meal, but they're still very much a part of our life, just in another way. So, thank you. Thank you for listening and watching The Next Room. So grateful for Phil Dykes and Kerry McLeod, mymediumship.com. And I will post all the links we talked about. As you can see, they are doing this for the pure love and the passion that they have. And it is something that they enjoy doing. And you can learn from them and go check out their video. I'm going to start following you guys. I love that you're doing that. So thanks again for listening to The Next Room. I will be back next week. And until that time, if you can be anything on the planet, anything at all, please be kind. Thanks again.